They were just kids trying to raise a few dollars for summer camp. A simple lemonade stand, 2 plastic chairs, a fold-out table, and a pitcher of homemade lemonade. Bright yellow signs with smiley faces and 50 in a cup, written in crayon. It was the kind of innocent childhood memory that parents hope their kids will carry forever. But what happened next shattered that moment into something no one on that street would ever forget. Her name was Marlene, HOA president, self-appointed guardian of community standards. And to her, this wasn't just a lemonade stand. It was a violation. A threat to the aesthetic harmony of a meticulously managed neighborhood. At least, that's what she told the police dispatcher when she dialed 911. You heard that right. She called the cops on an 8-year-old and his 6-year-old sister. At first, the neighbors thought it was a joke. Surely no one would take something so innocent, so American, and twist it into a criminal offense. But the joke faded the moment the patrol car rolled around the corner, lights on, slowly pulling up to the tiny lemonade stand. The kids froze. Their mom, Sarah, came rushing out of the house in disbelief. She tried to stay calm as the officer stepped out, his hand resting near his holster. The kids didn't understand what was happening, but the fear on their mother's face said enough. What followed next would ripple through the neighborhood like wildfire. But let's rewind for a second, because this wasn't the first time Marlene had done something like this. Over the past year, she'd gained a reputation, a barking at teens for skateboarding on the sidewalk, a writing up warning letters for overgrown lawn edges, even demanding a neighbor repaint their mailbox because it was 2 shades too beige. But this crossed a line. Sarah, still stunned by what just happened, recorded everything on her phone. The officer wasn't aggressive, but the fact that he was even there, responding to a 911 call about lemonade, it spoke volumes. Sarah's voice trembled as she asked, "Is this really happening right now?" The officer, clearly uncomfortable, quietly said, "We have to respond to all calls." The video went viral before sunset. Within hours, the internet was on fire. Tweets, Facebook posts, Reddit threads, all outraged. People couldn't believe it. Comment sections flooded with anger and disbelief. Who calls the cops on kids selling lemonade? This is peak OA insanity. That Karen needs to be stopped. But while the online world reacted, the real storm was brewing right there in the neighborhood. The next morning, a second lemonade stand popped up. This time, run by teenagers down the block. Then another, and another. Within 2 days, nearly every front yard on the street had one. Homemade signs, pink lemonade, cookies, even iced tea. It wasn't about profit anymore. It was about sending a message. Marlene, furious, began handing out HOA violation notices left and right. Unauthorized commercial activity. She scribbled in red pen. But the community had already chosen sides. And this time it wasn't hers. What started as a quiet protest turned into something bigger. Parents wore lemonade legal shirts. Kids made chalk drawings of lemons and smiley faces all over the sidewalks. The block transformed into a celebration of rebellion against control. And it was beautiful. And then, just when things seemed to reach their peak, Marlene made her biggest mistake yet. She tried to shut it all down. Official cease and desist letters were mailed. A threat of legal action. A demand to remove all lemonade stands or face HOA fines of up to $250 per day. But what she didn't expect was what came next. By the time the news spread about the cameras, the neighborhood was boiling. People were outraged, not just because of the invasion of privacy, but because they had been lied to. For months, maybe years. One woman, Susan, who lived right across from the new decorative light post, said she'd noticed it blinking one night. At first, she thought it was a reflection, but now she realized it was a camera. Right outside her living room window. She was furious, and she wasn't alone. The HOA president, Bill Donahue, had been the mastermind behind the camera installation. He called it Safety Initiative, meant to deter package theft and monitor suspicious behavior. But people weren't buying it. Turns out, there was no community vote, no notice, no warning. Bill had used discretionary funds, meant for landscaping and community events, to install over a dozen hidden cameras across the neighborhood. Driveways, porches, walking paths, even near the communal playground. Parents were especially outraged. Jessica, a single mother of two, stormed into the emergency HOA meeting, held that Friday night in the clubhouse. Her voice cracked with emotion as she asked, "You mean to tell me you've been recording my children without my consent, while they play, while they ride their bikes?" The room went dead silent, and then all hell broke loose. People stood up, shouting over one another. Accusations flew. Someone yelled, "This isn't a neighborhood anymore. It's a damn surveillance state." Another shouted, "You think you're the FBI?" Bill, the HOA board, tried to calm the room, but it was too late. Residents demanded answers. Who had access to the footage? Where was it stored? Had it been shared? Bill stammered, sweating through his collar. He said the footage was secure, only reviewed when necessary. But that didn't help. Someone pulled up the HOA bylaws on their phone and pointed out that any surveillance project over $30,000 required a full community vote. Bill had spent over $15,000. That's when Kevin, a normally quiet guy, stood up and said something no one expected. "I checked my HOA dues receipt. That camera in front of my house. I paid for it. So technically, I own it, and I'm tearing it down." The room cheered. The next morning, cameras started disappearing. One by one, residents removed them. Saws, hammers, ladders, whatever it took, and the footage. Someone hacked into the cloud storage and posted screenshots showing that yes, the cameras had zoom and audio. And yes, at least 2 board members had accessed private clips, including footage from inside people's garages. That's when the police got involved. And what happened next shocked everyone. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors who had once shared backyard barbecues now sat on opposite sides of the aisle, divided by the brutal fight this HOA had ignited. Emily sat beside her lawyer, calm but exhausted. Karen, flanked by her HOA board members, looked smug, but even she couldn't hide the nerves in her shaking hands. The judge reviewed the evidence, the permits, the documentation, the community petitions, the photos of the treehouse being torn apart without notice. The silence in that room was so sharp, you could hear hearts pounding. And then, the ruling. The HOA was found in violation of multiple state and local ordinances. They had acted unlawfully by not issuing proper notice. They had breached their own charter by conducting demolition without full board approval. And they had exposed themselves to civil liability for emotional distress and property damage. The judge turned to Emily and ruled in her favor. Karen's face went pale. The HOA was ordered to pay restitution for the treehouse. Not just its monetary value, but the emotional harm caused to the family. A fine was also imposed for misconduct, and a warning was issued to the board. Any future abuses of power would result in forced restructuring of the HOA itself. But that wasn't the end. Emily, empowered by the court's decision, rallied the community once again. This time to vote. A special meeting was called. The HOA president, Karen, was voted out, along with 3 of her closest allies on the board. The new board. It included Emily and 2 other parents, people who remembered what it felt like to fight not for control, but for community. And that treehouse, with funds donated by neighbors and support from the new HOA, it was rebuilt. Better, stronger, taller, with a plaque on one of the beams that read, "For every child who dares to dream, and every parent brave enough to protect that dream." Justice wasn't just served. It was built, board by board, in the place where injustice once stood. And now, that treehouse still stands. A quiet, wooden symbol of what happens when power is challenged. When a neighborhood says, enough. And when one mother dares to take on an entire system and win.